Hi, welcome to this ECMA 6 course. In this course, we will take a look at all the latest and greatest features of JavaScript and ECMA 6 Plus. I'll talk about Babel as well, templating strings, spread operator, map object, sets. So nowadays, if you want to learn Angular or Vue or any other framework, you're gonna have to use ECMA 6 specification, which is the latest of JavaScript. So if you're interested in learning ECMA 6, this is the right place for you. And I'm really excited to start this journey with you. And let's get started with learning ECMA 6.
Now from this video onwards, and in this section, we are going to start learning ECMA 2015, or you can call it ECMA 6. We've already seen some features of ECMA 6, but I wanted to have a separate and complete section about ECMA 6, so we could talk more about ECMA 6 features and we could look at it in details. So a discussion of what ECMA 6 is should be started with a quick recap of a history of ECMA in general. In 1995, JavaScript was originally created by Brendan Ike at Netscape and then was adopted by Microsoft as JavaScript. With different versions of a language for different browsers, there was soon an urgent need to standardize the language. ECMA, or you can call it European Computer Manufacturer Association, is a governing body that provides the ECMA specification for JavaScript browser implementation. Shortly after its foundation, the ECMA 1 specific was released in 1997. Following this, the release of ECMA 2 and ECMA 3 came out very quickly, and ECMA 4 was much argued about, and then was eclipsed by ECMA 5 in 2009. Now, which brought us a new array method like each, map, and filter, and as of June 2015, we now have an official specific for ECMA 6. So what does that mean for us as a JavaScript developer? It means that we now have a ton of new options to work with when designing our JavaScript project. So we have seen a few keywords for declaring variables, let and cons. For functions, we haven't talked about it yet, but we can also use default parameter as arrow function. ECMA 6 also contains classes, template strings, and new ways of dealing with arrays and objects. We'll be talking all about this in this section of the course.
Welcome back, everybody. Now this section is going to be about ES6, so new features of JavaScript. I know you guys are very excited, but before we start learning ES6, I want to explain one hurdle. Now ES6 has a lot of new features which was introduced in 2015. Now, what happened after it was introduced and so many features were there, and now we have so many browsers. We have a Chrome browser, we have an Edge, Internet Explorer, Firefox, Opera. Now, they all took some time to implement all those ES6 features into their browsers. So anyone developing an application will make sure that their code will run, which was written following ES6 features. Now, because of that problem, we have a JavaScript compiler called Babel. Now, I'm right now looking at the chart in 2018, in January of 2018. So at the moment, if we look at IE11, which pretty much doesn't support a lot of ES6 features. So if you write ES6 and you run your JavaScript code, which is written in ES6 onto IE11, it is not going to work because not many features are supported. Now here we have the list of the features. For example, we have for off loop, which we'll talk about down the road. So that is not available in IE11. Now we have a Chrome. So the Chrome latest build is CH6552. Now here we can see we still don't have some of the features. We don't have a proper tail calls. Okay, so that feature is not available in Chrome latest build. But when we look at down pretty much all the main browser, for example, Chrome or Microsoft Edge 16, they are actually head to head to each other. They're all trying to implement ES6 features. So no one will have to use some kind of a JavaScript compiler, which will take the new code written in ES6 and compile that code into old code. So old specification of ECMAScript, which is already there in the browser. So this is what we need, Babel. If I read the description on the website, it says Babel is a JavaScript compiler. Now, so far in this course, we have not seen any. We've seen some of the features. For example, defining a variable with the let keyword instead of var. I'll show you a demo for that right here. So we've seen that. We've seen the const keyword to define a constant. Right. So we'll convert let and const and see how Babel does that. But before we jump into Babel, I want to show you that pretty much all the browsers are compatible with new features, and you should be writing your code using all the new features. And do not try to use the old JavaScript, because it's gonna go updated again and again. Every year there's gonna be new feature, so a new version of ECMAScript is gonna come in. So we need to get updated. So we should start writing our code using ECMAScript 6, which is recommended right now because most of the browsers have already implemented. So here we can see the chart. Yeah, main browser, Firefox, Edge, and Chrome, they all have implemented pretty much most of the features, just a couple of them left. But still, we want to make sure that our ES6 code run everywhere. So even though we have ES6, we should compile our code to ES5, so we mean no matter where they run our code, it will work the same. So for that, we use Babel. Now here, if I go to try it out, it will take me to this page. Now here, I'm actually going to define, I think it's a bit too small, so we'll just make it a bit bigger. Right here, it's fine. Now here, if I type let a is equal to 5 or 4, and as you can see, the Babel is compiling our code into ES5. So right now, if I say const b is equal to 4, and now it will convert that into var b is equal to 4. And also, if I use one of the arrow function, which we haven't talked about it yet, but don't worry, we will take a look at arrow function syntax. I'm just gonna show you that what it does. So here I say var abc is equal to, and then I'll just add an anonymous function, and then I'll just say, okay, I'm going to write this, and here I'm gonna say, okay, console.log hello Babel, right? And now here I wrote the function with this arrow function syntax, but when you look at the side, it actually converted the arrow function syntax to a general function. So it says function abc blah blah blah, and it just compiles it. Now we know what Babel does now and how it works. The main section of the Babel would be in a deployment section of this course, where I will get the product and compile it with the Babel and have the build ready for actual production build. So that build we can take that build and run it on a server. So we don't really run a lot of files. We just make a build of it and then run it on a server. So we'll have a project and we will see how we can use a Webpack with Babel. If I go to Learn 2015, or we go to docs for setup, and here we have a command line tool, command line interface called CLI for a lot of frameworks, and we also have some build system as well. So here I will have a video for compiling our code using gulp, and we can implement the Babel there as well. So here, this is the reference guide for that, how to use that. But don't worry, we'll have a section in the course where we'll learn Babel using with gulp. So yeah, And I just wanted to give you a bit of introduction about what Babel, what is ES6, and why we need Babel. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed ES6 features, and yeah, I can't wait to get feedback from you guys. Alright, I'll see you guys in the section. Alright guys, welcome back, and this is one of the most important section of this course. In this section, we are going to take a look at ECMA6 specification in details. Now, there's a lot of cool features were introduced in ECMA6. For example, we now have a let and a const keyword to define a variable. We have a template strings, which we want to talk about in this video. We have a spread operator, map, sets, the for off loop, and also we have some function and objects, new things. For example, defining a function with the arrow syntax. We have symbols, we have iterator, generators, and some asynchronous features as well, which we'll take a look at. So first of all, oh yeah, and the classes. Classes is one of the cool things in ECMA6. Alright, so let's go to the web storm, and here I have index.html and I have a script.js file. Let's go to script.js file, and here I want to write a string on a console. For example, if I want to say console.log, and I'll say hello world, right? I'm going to save the file and refresh the browser, and I get this hello world. And now, for example, I want to have a variable. I'll just say var, or we can say let name is equal to, I'll just say John, right? And I'll just want to say hello John. Now to do that, what I will have to do, for example, if I just remove the word, and then I will have to concatenate the variable. So I'll just say plus name, right? I'm going to save the file, and I'm going to refresh the browser, and now as you can see it says hello John, but it seems like it's a hello John. There's no space between hello and John, so we actually have to go one extra step to have a space. Either we have an empty space here, or we can have an empty string with concatenated in this statement. I'm going to save the file and refresh the browser. Now I have a space between. Now this is one extra step that I had to go to achieve this. Right. Now one more thing we can do here, instead of just using this, we can use a template string. Now let's take a look at the template string syntax. Now here, instead of using single quotes or double quotes, you will use backticks. So backticks characters, and then inside that I will say hello. I'm going to give a space, and then I want to say $, add a code block, and then the name of the variable, which is available within the scope of that. Now let's take a look at a bit more advanced demo. So for example, we want to have a person detail written on our HTML page. Now I'm gonna do it without template string first, and then we come back and do it with the template strings. All right. For example, if I just say okay, print, right? I'm gonna say person, right? And then I am going to say okay, I would say name, person, age, and I would just say profession, and I could just say gender, right? And I can say yeah, that's fine, right? So here I will basically have to write something. Let's just say I will have to say okay, I want to grab the name and I want to write that on a document. So I'll just say document.write, and I'll just say okay, the name would be plus name, right? And then after that I will have to basically copy and paste 4 times, and I will change the variable names here. So I'll just say age, and then I'll have profession, and also I have a gender, right? So here I will change the name to age, profession, and then we have a gender, right? And then after that I'll just say print, and I'll give a name, let's just say give Awais, and then I will give age of 29, and then
I'll say programmer, and then I'll just say mail. Right, I'm going to save the file and I'm going to refresh the browser. And now as you can see that we wrote document.write name and all these things, but it actually wrote on the same line and it actually missing the spaces as well. So name and race and age doesn't have a space within, the profession doesn't have a space within that as well. So it's taking a lot more work to finish that. So for example, if I want to go to the next line, I will have to say, okay, document.write, and I'll just say BR, right? I will have to say BR tag here. Right, I'm going to save the file, refresh the page, and now it's giving us an error. Now the error is because we cannot really have this here. Oops, this is the thing here. I'll save the file, refresh the browser, and now because we wrote a BR tag in our HTML, so that's why we are in the second line. Now you want to have these too many times whenever you want to go to the second line. Now here we can see there's a lot more work to do if we want to have a text written on a separate lines that properly organized. Now let's take a look at the same thing with using a template string. So I'm just going to write the template string right here on the top. So I'll just say document.write, and I'll just choose the backticks now. Right, now here I will say name, and after that I will say okay $, and I want to give a name, right? And then after that I will just come down to the next line, and then on the next line I will just start typing something else. For example, I will say age, and then we just say age, and we can pass in age variable, right? And then we can go to the next line and just say okay, I want to type here profession, and then a $, and then we have a profession. Now it's giving us error because we need to add the template string here. Right, the last thing we need to do is by just adding a gender, and we'll just say okay, it is gender. Right, I'm going to save the file and just make sure it's fine. Now let's just say I'm going to comment this out. Right, I'm going to comment the code out, and now if I just go refresh the browser, and now you can see that we have a name, a race, age, 29, profession, programmer. So it got all the spaces which we wrote here. So every space we have between a name and the variable we define, it's getting its spaces there, right? And also if I just go and say okay, that's it, and then inside that if I just say okay, BR tag here, I'm gonna save the file and just go refresh the page, and there you go, it's getting the BR as well. So here I'll just type BR, and then I go BR, right? And oops, I need to go align this first, and then here we go BR tag, right? I'm gonna save the file and refresh the page, and there you go. So how cool is that? The template string saved us a lot of time and a lot of code, so we don't have to say document.write or document.write for profession and anything else, and then we will have to have another BR here. Now I'm gonna use console.log so you get a bit of better understanding. So instead of just using a document.write, we want to type console.log, right? I'm going to log these details in the console. I'm using this backtick characters, and we just organize this thing. And also I'm going to remove these BRs as well. So we want to see what happens if we write this without BR. Oops. Okay, now I'm going to save the file. I'm going to refresh the browser, and here you can see that we have name erased written there, age and stuff like that. Now I think I haven't reloaded the page yet, so I'm going to refresh that from there. Okay, so let's just go to the next line here. I'm going to save it. Oops. Save the file and let's refresh the page. And there we go. So we're in the next line. As you can see that we didn't have to use a BR or to go to the next line. So template string is basically printing out everything the way we write here. So for example, if we have a space, we have a new line, it is just going to follow that. And also, what are the variable values we're pushing it in with the $sign and in the code block, it is going to get printed as well. So template strings are pretty great to work with. It's so much fun. You can save a lot of time by writing one line with the template string, and you have everything in there, and you can just keep copying that as well. It is very helpful with the DOM as well. In our final project, we will see how we can use templates strings to actually save a lot of time, and how quickly is it to create a template. For example, details of something, right? An object detail, and you want to write it there. So you don't have to go and basically say, okay, I want to get that first, query selector, and then just create element, BR, then create H1, and then inside that there's another text node and all that stuff. So you can simply just go and create your element with the dollar and the variable name, the value you want to put in there, and that's pretty much it is. And it works really nicely. Right, so in the next video, we are going to take a look at spread operator. Welcome back, everybody. So in this video, we are going to take a look at the spread operator in JavaScript, ECMA script, it's ECMA6 specification. Right, so here we have three arrays, Awais, John, and Mark. So for example, I will just create another array, and I'll just say people, right? And then I will have a couple of people inside that. For example, if I say, okay, I want to have, well, I can say Tuan, right? Age is going to be 30, and oops, we put that in the string 30, and then engineer in the string as well. And then we just say computing. Right, now here I have one person, or we can say person, right? And then also I'm going to console the log this thing, console log. I'll just say person. Right, I'm going to save the file, I'm going to refresh the browser, and I can see I have Tuan there, right? I have a Tuan there, so Tuan 30, engineer, and computing. Okay, so now, for example, I want to add someone within this person array, and the array I've already created. So for example, if I want to add myself here at the starting point, so just say, okay, I want to have myself Awais here, right? And at the end, I want to have Mark, okay? And I'm going to save the file and just going to refresh the page. And now here I have something called, like, we have values of Tuan, and then also we have an array within an array. So here, as you can see, that we have an array, and then within that array we have another array saying Awais 29 programmer playing games, and at the end we have this array Mark. I'm just gonna make it bigger, and let's just make it a little bit up. Right, so I hope I'm not covering this. So yeah, so here we can see that we have an array within an array. Now, the spread operator will help us to add and spread that array and concatenate that array within the person object. So here, if I use 3 dots, so I'll just say 1, 2, 3 dots, right? And then I'll go to next mark, and I'll say 1, 2, 3 dot, right? I'm going to save the file and refresh the browser. And now, if I just expand this, now this time, as you can see, that it actually did not add an array within an array. It actually basically opened and spread that array and put that in there. So for example, if I just go and move Awais from here and then put it here with the comma, so we don't have any errors. So here, just remove this as well. And then I'll just remove the mark spread operator to show you guys again what's happening here. So I'm going to refresh the page, and now we can see Tuan, it should be on index 0, and 30 should be on index 1. So here we can see Tuan 30, and then where we put Awais, it's starting from there and actually concatenating and opening the array and then putting in there. So this is how the spread operator is used. It's pretty cool because when you add an array and concatenate some variable in an array, you will have to deal with it. So you have to go inside another array to use the data from that. So using a spread operator is pretty cool. It just opens up an array and just put it in there wherever you put the variable name. So here we can see we have an array and then another array for mark. So yeah. Welcome back everybody. In this video we are going to take a look at a new data structure type, a map object, which was introduced in ECMA6 specification. Now what is a map object? Well, first of all, it's a key value pair which holds the data. Now what is the difference between a regular object and a map object? Now I'm going to read a description from Mozilla Developer Networks which will help us to understand what is the difference actually. So objects, regular objects, are similar to maps in both which let you set keys to values, retrieve those values, delete keys, and detect whether something is stored at a key. Because of this, there were no built-in alternative. So objects have been used as maps historically. However, there are important differences between objects and maps. So the first difference is that the key of an object are strings and symbols, where there can be any value for a map, including functions, objects, and any primitive data type. You can get the size of a map with the size property, while the number of properties in object must be determined manually. A map is an iterable and can thus be directly iterated, whereas iterating over an object requires obtaining its keys in some fashion and iterating over them. An object has a prototype, so there are default keys in a map that could collide with the keys you define, and if you're not careful. So a map may perform better in these scenarios. Additionally, you can add values and remove values by using some methods as well. So we will go to Mozilla Developer Network and we'll take a look at the documentation for a second, and then we'll try to understand a bit more. So I'm here in the Mozilla Developer Network, and here we will go up and we can first of all see we have some properties. So the map.prototype.size, which gives us the size of a map, and we have some methods. So we want to delete, we can use this delete method. We want to have entries, we can use the for each loop. We can get, has, key, sets, values. Let's take a look at the demo as well. So I'm going to move this here, and we are going to create a map object in a second. So we'll just go to 1 second, guys. All right, so here I want to create a map object, and I'll just console the log. Now first of all, to create a map object, it's just simply, let's just say person is equal to a new map, right? We created a map object. So now how do we set the values, or how do we store the values in that person map object? Well, you can do that by person.set and then a key and a value. And now here we can say name, and then a value is like, let's just say my name always. Let's save the file and let's just get console.log, and we'll just print out a person, right? Let's save the file, refresh the browser, and here we have a map, right? I'm going to just expand this. So here we have the size, which is set to 1 because we have only one value, and then we have entries, which is basically an array. So here we have an entry on 0 index, which has a key as a name and a value as always. Now if I change this name to, for example, a function, which is basically print, all right, and I'll say, okay, in that function, I'll just say console.log, and I'll just say, hey. I'm going to save it. Let's just refresh the browser, and here we can see within that key is a function now. So if you try to add a key as a function in a regular object, it's going to give you an error. So we can see we can have a function as a key of any primitive data, arrays, or symbols as well. So I'm just going to remove this. So that's one difference that we talked about, that we can have functions, arrays, or any primitive data. Right, so here we can have a multiple values. So I'm just gonna copy and paste and just gonna refresh the browser, and here we can see we have arrays. I'm gonna save it actually and refresh the browser now, and here we can see it still has a 1. Well, maybe we're not reloading it. No, we're not reloading it. I'm gonna save it again, and I'm gonna say, okay, let's refresh again. Alright, so did you notice that we added few things here, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 name with the keys and values, but it's not even showing them here. So it's getting rid of the duplicates. So here, if I just change the name 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm gonna save this, refresh the browser, and now we get map 6. So basically, it actually very smart to actually having a duplicate values and just ignore them, right? So here we have a name 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 now. Now, this is how you create a map. Now, how do we grab the values from a map? So we can use in a regular object a dot notation, but how do we use it here? So if I just say, okay, person dot a name, and I'll just want to grab that. I'm going to save the file and refresh the browser. That will be undefined. As you can see, it doesn't know what we're talking about. What does the name means, right? No, we can't use that. So we need to use a method called get. And then we want to pass in the key. So I'll just say name. Save the file and refresh the browser, and it gives me back the value, arrays. And if I say, okay, give me a name 1. Save the file and refresh the browser, it gives me arrays again, because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, now it should make sense. Let's refresh. Now we have arrays 1. Now we can grab the values by using a get method. We can set the values using a set methods. Now we want to check whether this value is available or not. So here we can check as well. So if I say, okay, console.log, and I'll say person.has, and I can say, okay, does it have this key, name 3? Save the file, refresh the browser, and that gives us true, because name 3 is there as well. So if I just say name 7 as in a key, I'm going to save the file and refresh the browser. Now it gives us false, because name 7 is not available in our person map object. I'm going to delete that. Now we can see we have a has, which can check whether this value or this key is available or not. Now we can see we can grab the keys and we can grab the values as well. So we know how we grab the value, but now we are going to use this, something like this. Okay, so I want to grab person.key, right? And then I'm going to say, okay, let's just say do this. And then I'm going to save the file and just refresh the browser. And now if I call this keys method, it gives us all the keys in an array. It actually removing all the values, not caring about, but it just grabs us only the keys. So similar to keys, I can use the values method as well. So if we say, get me all the values available in this map object, I'm going to refresh the browser, and now this time we get all the values instead of keys. Now let's take a look at how we can iterate over a map object. So I'm just going to use the person.forEach, and I'm going to pass in another function here, and here I will call, let's just say, person, right? Then we'll just say console.log and just log a person. Save the file and just go refresh, and here we have all the values. Now let's take a look at how we can add key value pairs in our person or map object, right, being in a constructor function. So I'm just going to remove this person.set. Let's remove the loop as well. And now here I am going to go, okay, let's add something. For example, if I want to add an object, arrays, so I'll just say, okay, I want to add array, and then here I have arrays, right? And the next line will have, let's just say another, and here I will pass in, let's just say new date, and the value would be, let's just say today. All right, and then we can save this, and let's just refresh the browser. But before that, we need to console.log person object so we can see the results for that. Save the file, refresh the browser, and here we have an array which has like values. So we have keys, aways 29, programmer, playing games, and then also we have a date object, and the value for that is today, right? So you can just write your you can add your data to a map object, right, being in a constructor function as well. So it's basically an arrays of arrays. So you have one array, and then inside that you add multiple arrays, right? So that was a data structure introduced in ECMA 6, which is a map object. And in the next video, we're gonna take a look at sets. Welcome back. Now in this video, we are going to take a look at set object in JavaScript. Now the definition or the simple way I could explain to you set is the set objects are a collection of values. You can iterate through the element of a set in insertion order. So a value in a set may only occur once, and it is unique, so you cannot have duplicates in the sets. So we're going to take a look at the demo as well. Then I'll take you to the documentation on Mozilla Developer Network. So we'll look at all the methods and properties available for sets. So for example, here I will go and I'm just going to make it bigger so it's better to see. Let's just say we say number set is equal to, and I'll just get an array, and we can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 6, 6, or we can say 1 again, 2 again, and 7, right? So I've created an array of numbers, right? So I'm going to say, okay, let's just create a set number, or we can say num set is equal to new set, and we can pass in a number set, right? An array, and then we can just go to console.log and we just say num set, just log that. So right now we have some duplicates in our array. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 is a duplicate, and then 5, 6, and 1, 2 again is a duplicate. So let's just say save the file, let's refresh the browser, and here we get a set object. Now here we have some entries. So it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What about these 1 and 2? What about this 4 here? So as you can see, the set will ignore the duplicate value within the set object. Now let's take a look at some of the methods available in a set object. So first of all, we're going to take a look at add method. So add method will let you add values inside of a set object. So here I'm actually going to remove this array, and I'm going to add values right being in the set object. So here I'm going to say, okay, num set.add, right? I'm going to add a value here. So here I'll just say, okay, the name of the person, I'll say John, right? Num set, we need to change the variable name, but it's fine. Okay, so here we say Paul. I'm going to save the file, refresh the browser, and here we can see we have a John and Paul. So what if I add one more time? So I'll say John add second time, refresh the browser, and still it ignored that because it cannot have a duplicate values. As you can see, the John is not. Now if I have some add methods, so I can have different methods as well for deleting and checking whether this value exists in the set or not. So here if I say, okay, console.log, and I'll say, okay, numset.has, and I'll say, okay, does it have a John in it? I'm going to save the file, refresh the browser, and here it says yes, true. So it has a John. So we can call the has method, like with the map object, we can call has method on a set object and check whether this value exists in a set or not. So here if I check, okay, ABC, I'm going to save the file and then refresh the browser, it gives me false because ABC doesn't exist in a set object. So we can see that we can add, we can check. How do we remove it now? So if I just say, okay, let's just remove this console.log, remove this as well. First of all, let's just right click and we can go refactor and rename, say person. Alright, so now I'm going to change the name here. I'll just type my name, and now I'll just go down, and here we'll just say person console.log, and we'll just say person. Alright, now I'm going to remove aways from this person set object. So we can do that by calling a delete method and giving it the name, a value. So I'm going to save the file and refresh the browser, and now I can see the person object has John, Oasis, and Paul. But what if I just go and move this down, save the file, and just refresh the browser, and now I have only John and Paul. So you can see that we have successfully removed aways from a person object. Now we can use a clear to remove all the elements. So for example, if I say okay, clear, and then we can just call this method and save the file and refresh the browser, and right now we have a set object, but it doesn't have anything because we have cleared. So the clear method is there as well. We have the for each, which we just seen in the map. You can use the for each as well. So for example, if I go and say okay, I want to have a person, and then for each I want to call another function. Let's say e as an element of value, so we just say console.log, we can pass in e. Alright, let's save the file. Alright, so we get John, Oasis, and Paul. So we can iterate over sets as well by using for each method. Now we can check has with the, we can check that with the has, we can check all the values for that. So we can have a set property as well, size property. So here if I say okay, well, console.log and person.size. I'm going to save the file, refresh the browser. As you can see, we have 3 entries in a set object. So that is a cool and data structure which does not allow duplicates. Welcome back everybody. In this video we are going to take a look at the for of loop statement, which basically creates a loop iterating over iteratable objects. For example, we have strings, arrays, node list, typed array, maps, and set. We can iterate over these objects using for of. So for example, if I go to PHP Storm here, I'll just say okay, let person, or let's just say we can say programming okay is equal to say JavaScript, right? Now what if I want to iterate over this JavaScript value? So we can say for, and then here we say okay, let a or let x of programming, and then we can just say console.log x and save the file. Let's just refresh the browser, and here it goes inside that and then read okay, the first character J, it prints out, it goes to the next character. So it's iterating over a string right now. Now we can use the for of loop for iterating on arrays as well. So for example, it's time to create an array. So what is your favorite programming language so far? So I can say here mine is JavaScript, C++, or we have a Java or Ruby. So I'm just gonna make it smaller size so we can look at it, and then we can say Python. All right, I'm gonna save the file, and now if I refresh the browser, it'll go and look for the first letter of word on index 0, prints it out. C++, Java, and Python is there as well. So let x is a variable which holds the current iteratable value. So it's an array 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the array. Okay, so the first is 1 value. So we can say okay, let x is a variable, a placeholder, and store the first value of iterable object into the x, and then we just go inside the function and do whatever we want to do with the x, and then we go back and then go grab the second one and store that into the next. So this is like how x work. because when I was using it, I had a bit of confusion about it, but I hope you understand it. So basically, let is just a variable name, which is going to store the value temporarily for specific index of an object we are iterating on. So here we can see we can iterate over arrays. Now let's take a look at how we can iterate over an object. So for example, if I go and create a map, so let's just say we create a new map object, and then after that we are going to set some values for. So we can say, okay, we can say programming.set, and first of all, let's just give a key. Let's just say HTML, and then we just say, well, I'm just gonna say, what can I say about HTML? Hypertext markup language, right? And then we go add something else. We can say programming.set. We can say scripting, and we can say here JavaScript is so cool, right? And then we say programming.set. We can say CSS, and then we can say style.html. Right, I'm gonna save the file. Now let's go refresh the page. Now as you can see, it's actually going inside of programming now, and it's grabbing this first value, and then we can see, okay, we have the 0 index, it's a key, and then 1 is a value. All right, so here another thing about iterating over map object. So here we can say there's a programming there. If I call a function.keys, I'm gonna save the file, I'm gonna refresh the browser, and it's giving me some kind of an error. So here we can see we have a programming, we have a keys, right, instead of key. Let's save the file, refresh the browser, and there we go. So right now we grab this programming object, which is a map object, and we just say, okay, I'm gonna grab just the keys from that, and then just put that first value into the next, and then go inside a function and work with it. So it's similar to getting a key. I can pass in dot values as well. I'm gonna save the file and refresh the browser, and now we're getting hypertext markup language, JavaScript is so cool, and style HTML. So how cool is that? You can grab keys or values from a map object and using for off loop. It's really cool. The last method I want to show you in for off loop is the entries method. So here, if I call entries, let's save the file. Let's refresh the browser, and here we can see it returned us the object. So yeah, that is iterating over object strings and arrays using for off loop, and you will be using for off loop a lot more. So this is so cool. Welcome back, and this is another coding challenge for you guys, and I hope you guys are excited about it. Right, so the challenge is by using for off loop and iterating over languages array, but instead of just getting JavaScript, we want to grab the values of JavaScript key. So inside that, I want to print out JavaScript. So if I go inside, let's just say for, let's let x of languages, and I'll just say, okay, console.log, and I'm going to say console.log x. I'm going to save and refresh the page. Now we are basically grabbing these values of JavaScript, C++, Python. So what I want to do is I want to grab the character of actual values on index 1. So this is the challenge for you guys, and yeah, if you want to give it a try, I would highly recommend do that and pause the video. So the last chance for you guys to pause the video. Alright, so I hope pretty much all of you was able to get this done. So what we can do, so first of all, we can see the problem. The problem is that this loop will go inside our array and grab the first value, which is on 0 index, and then on 1 index and 2 index, and then onwards, right? So we have x here, I am actually going to use another loop. Now we're gonna have a loop within the loop. So we say, okay, go grab the first value, and it comes back with a JavaScript. And I say, okay, I've got a JavaScript now, and then I wanna loop through a JavaScript string. So we can do that by using for let a or let y of x. How cool is that? Now once we go and grab the value of x, and then we go inside and say, okay, x is here, which is JavaScript, then I want to loop through the x as well. So here I'll just say console.log, I'll just console y. I'm gonna save and refresh the browser, and there we go. So here we can see JAVA script, and we go C++, and then we go down, it says a Python. So loop within a loop. We have a lot more coding challenges related to loops and iterating over objects, which will give us a nice idea how actually things work and how to solve these problems. Because in your programming career, this is the main problem you're gonna have. This is the problem, and you're gonna solve these. So we have a 50 objects which inherits from other objects, and there's objects inside on objects. This is a complete mess. Now, getting the values from those objects and manipulating them, it's a bit of tricky business. So we want to have a lot more coding challenges. So yeah, that's about it for this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Welcome back. In this video, we are going to take a look at default parameters in function. So prior to ECMA 6, we really didn't have this feature to define a default values for a parameter we pass into a function. So for example, let me give you a demo here. So we just say function add, I pass in x parameter and y, and I'll just say, okay, return console, or maybe just console.log. We don't really need to return console.log and say x plus y, right? Save the file, and this is called add function. Here I'm gonna save and refresh the browser, and now basically I'm actually not passing in any value, so it's giving me NaN, so not available. So what we want to do here, we want to have a values as a default. So if the user doesn't pass in any values while calling the function, it should have a default values in there. So we can do that by just adding equal to sign, and then we just give 5 as a default value is equal to, let's just say 5 as well for the y. I'm gonna save the file and just go refresh the browser, and now we get 10. So we have the default values. But what if I just pass in, let's just say 2, 2, 3. I'm gonna save the file and refresh the browser, and now we get 5. So the only time this default value is going to assign to x and y when the user or the developer doesn't pass in the value. So if I say here 10 plus 3 should be 13, and now we get 13. So this is how you can define a default parameters to the function parameter. So we can take a look at another example. I can say here, all right, let's just say name and hobby. All right, so here we can say, okay, the name by default should be admin, and this should be, oops, I need to push it in as a string. Hobby is programming. All right, so here we have admin, or whatever the name you want to type in here. All right, and here I can just go, okay, we can use the template strings. So here we can say the name is, and here we can say $, and then grab the name, right? And then I can say, let's go to the next line, and here I can say, when I go into the next line, just want to organize some stuff. Right, so here I want to say the hobby is $, and we just say hobby. Right now, if I call this add function, we should have changed the name of that, but I'll just leave it as it is. So here, if I say okay, I'll just give it a race, and I don't give a second parameter. I'm going to save and refresh the browser, and now it says the name is always and the hobby is programming. Well, I did not pass in any second parameter for a hobby. The reason why I took it because we have a second parameter and we have a default value for that. So if I say, okay, I'm not gonna pass it anything, it's make it empty, but it's still a value, right? So if I say, okay, ABC, now guess what's gonna happen? I'm gonna refresh the browser. Now it says the name is empty because we're still giving some kind of value here. All right, and then we're passing in the ABC as a second parameter, right? So it's gonna override the value, a default value of hobby in there. Right, so one more thing in this video we can talk about is, I'm just gonna remove this. So we have something called enhancing object literals. For example, when you create an object, so let's say person is equal to this, and I would just say name, and we'll call it function, and it would just return, let's just say always, right? And I can say, okay, the second would be age, and then say function, and then we'll just say, well, return 29. Alright, I'm going to save the file. Okay. And I'm going to just, let's say console.log, or we can just say person.name, right? So here, if I just refresh the browser, it's going to give me a waste because the return value is always, right? Now in ECMA 6, we don't really have to type it in a function anymore. So when you're assigning the key to a function, then you just simply say, okay, I am just going to use this name, right? So you don't really have to define a name, and then we just have, okay, well, this is it. So this is the function, and I'm going to save the file now. I'll just refresh the browser. As you can see, it works the same. So if I call the age, I'm going to save the file and just refresh the browser, it comes back 29. So basically ECMA 6 enhanced this object literals. So here, if you're defining a function, then you just simply define a function, and that's about it. Alright, so yeah, that's about this video. In the next video, we're going to take a look at arrow function syntax. Welcome back everybody. In this video, we are going to take a look at arrow functions. Now, arrow functions were introduced in ECMA 6. So what is the definition? Let me explain to you quickly. So an arrow function expression has a shorter syntax than a function expression, and it does not have its own this, argument, super, or a new target. Now, these function expressions are best suited for non-method functions, and they cannot be used as constructors. So let's take a look at how we define a function first, and then we will convert that into arrow function syntax. Alright, so let's go to PHP-Storm and start looking at arrow function syntax. But first, we can have a look how we define a function expression. So it's very simple. We've been using it throughout the course. So if I say var person is equal to function, and I'll just say, okay, person, and I'll just say console.log, I'll say log the person. Right, so this is the function I define, just a normal function expression. Now I can say, okay, I want to call this person, and I'll just say John. Alright, I'm going to save the file. I'll just refresh the browser. I can see the John is on the console. Now this line can be shortened. I mean to say the function can be written with arrow function syntax, and it would be a lot less code. So how do we change this to arrow function syntax? So first of all, I'm actually going to remove this keyword function, and I'm going to go and add is equal to sign and a greater than sign. So this is an arrow function syntax. So now one more thing here, if I just, first of all, let's look at it. So if I save the file and refresh the browser, I can see it still works the same. Now how we can make this more short. So if I go and remove this block of code, and I'll just bring up the console.log, and here I'm going to save the file and refresh the browser. I can see it still works. So if only one parameter is defined, we don't really have to have a code block, all right? And also, if there's only one parameter, I don't even need these parentheses around our parameter. I'm going to save the file and just refresh the browser, and there you go. The John still prints out. So what are the few syntaxes of arrow function? So here we can see with one parameter, this is how we define a function. Now let's create a function without any parameter, which is very simple as well. So if I say var a is equal to, I'll just open the parentheses, is equal to sign, and then greater than, and that's pretty much it. All right, so I'm gonna say, okay, inside that, or I can just leave that thing there, and he'll say console.log, we'll just say arrow function works. I'll save the file, and we just need to call that function. So we just say a, that's pretty much it, and then we go refresh the browser, and it says arrow function works. So this is how you can define a function without any parameter. So this video is a little bit of introduction about arrow function syntax. So in the next video, we are going to take a look at the this keyword in arrow function syntax. Welcome back. In this video, we are going to take a look at arrow functions and the this scope. So let's go to PHP-SROM, and here we are going to create an object. So I'll just say var, I'll just say person is equal to, we create an object. First of all, we give it a name. So let's just say a name, and I'll just say John, right? And after that, I'll have another key, let's say hobbies, and we will pass in an array for that. So here we just say programming JavaScript, and we can say fishing and playing games. Oops, I need to put that in a string, and we can just make it a little bit smaller so we could just look at this in the screen. So we just say video games, right? So now this is, we have an object. Now the third key is going to be, let's just say we call it print actions, right? And I'm gonna pass in a function for that, and here for that we are basically going to grab the hobbies, or we can say print hobbies here. So we just say hobbies, and here we're gonna print all the hobbies available in this person object. We can do that by accessing hobbies by using this keyword dot, and we can say hobbies, grab me this dot hobbies. So it's gonna reference to the object itself and its properties. So this keyword is going to reference to the object itself, and then we say dot hobbies, the key of which is available in an object. So now here we can say this dot hobbies dot for each loop, and it's gonna take a callback function. We just say okay, and I'm just gonna give a parameter hobby. Now grab the hobby, and I'll say create a new variable. I'll just say str is equal to. Now I want to grab name key from a person object. Now right now we can see we are in a function scope. We're not in object scope anymore. So if I type here this dot name, and I would just say okay plus, and I can just say likes, and then we can say hobby, right? And here we want to have a concatenation operator, not is equal to operator. Now we can just say console.log, and we can say console.log string. I'm going to save the file, and let's go and call this. So we just say person.print hobbies, right? And let's save the file and refresh the browser. And here we get likes programming, likes JavaScript, likes fishing. But what about this dot name? Well, we are actually trying to reference that to this dot name. Well, it did not actually print out the name of the person, which is John. Now, how do we fix that? So here we have a this, which is referencing to an object itself. So this is why when we get inside this function, we say this and .name, it is not able to access the property on the person object. Now, how do we fix that? How can we get this working? So there are a couple ways that you can do that. So I'm going to go inside a function. I will just say var is equal to, this is equal to this. All right. Now we'll just say, okay, I'm going to create a variable this, which is set to this. Now instead of this, if I add an underscore here, and I'm going to save the file and refresh the browser. And now, as you can see, we are able to access the name property from an object. All right, so another way to get this working, I'm actually going to remove this line, var this dot this. So this underscore this is equal to this. Okay. Now here, I'm going to chain on with the bind method. So I'll say bind, and I will just say here this. Right, I'm going to remove underscore from here, and now if I save the file and refresh the browser, and we can see that John is getting printed. So we are able to access this name key within our for each function. Now, arrow function syntax solves this issue. Let's take a look at how we can modify this function and try to make the this.name working within our for each scope. So I'm going to remove bind this. I'm going to save the file, and here we are going to go and basically remove this function, and I'm going to remove this as well. So now in ECMAScript 6, you know that you don't have to define the key for a function within an object. So here we say print hobbies, which is a function, and here we can say this.hobbies for each function. So here the callback function is going to be converted to an arrow function syntax. So to do that, I'm going to remove the function keyword, and also I'm going to remove the hobbies because it's only one parameter. So if you have a multiple parameter, you need to have a parenthesis. Well, let's just keep the parenthesis for now. So we'll just remove it so it's not confusing for you guys. Now here I'm going to use is equal to and then greater than sign. And also I can't remove this code block because we have a multiple line of code within our function. So let's save the file and let's refresh the browser and see what we get. And there we go. So here you can see John is there for like programming, like JavaScript, like fishing. So now we are able to access this key by using the arrow function syntax, and that function solves this issue. So that was a video about arrow functions and the this scope. In the next video, we are going to talk about a destructuring assignment. Welcome back everybody. In this video we are going to take a look at a destructuring assignment available in ES6. Right, so for that we're going to go to php-strom, and here I'm going to create a variable and I'm going to call it let's just say programming. Right, I'm going to say, okay, what are my favorite programming languages? So first of all, JavaScript is my favorite, and then comes Java, and then we have C++, and then we have Ruby, and then we have Python, right. So now if I want to use a destructuring assignment, so for example, first of all, before we can use the destructuring assignment, we're going to understand how we can retrieve the values from an array. So we already know that. We've already talked about how to retrieve. But just quickly take a look at programming. If I say, okay, 0, and that would be console.log, and then we can just log it on the console. Let's refresh the browser. We can see we can grab JavaScript. Now I'm going to use the destructuring assignment to actually access the values, instead of just typing the keys index of that value, I'm just gonna destructure this array. So instead of just typing the name here for the variable, I'm actually going to use square brackets. And inside the square brackets, I will just say, well, we can just say first, and I'm going to type a comma here and then say last. Right, I'm going to save the file, and if I down here, if I try to console the log first, and I'm going to refresh the browser, and you can see I'm able to grab the JavaScript from an array. How this thing is working? Are you confused? Don't worry, we're going to make sure that you understand what I'm talking about here. Now here, when I use this destructuring assignment, where I have a square brackets and I pass in a variable name and a second variable name. So what if I console.log last here? I'm going to save the file, refresh the browser, and now it gets me Java. Now how is this working? Now basically what is going on here is that the first variable you define in a destructuring assignment, that will be linked to the first index of an array, which is 0, and then second variable you define here, which will have the value of index 1, and so on. So for example, if I want to create first and the last variable, and I want to assign the first variable to JavaScript and the last variable to Python, how do I do that? Well, we can do that by simply defining the commas. So for example, this is a 0 index. I'm just going to bring it down. Actually, here we have more space now. So this first is equal to JavaScript because it's the first index. Now here I will go and add another comma here. Now within these commas, there is no value at the moment, right? So what is going to happen is that the first is going to equal to JavaScript, and then here in the commas, it is going to grab Java and put it in there, but there is no variable defined there, so that means we just can't use it. So we just define a comma to just skip the value in an array. So for example, so we have a 0 index, and Java is on index 1, and then we have index 2 for C++, and index 3 for Ruby, and then Python for I don't know, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, 4. So for example, if I add another comma here and then another comma here, so what's happening? So first, which will be equal to the first index of an array, and then we have a second, third value, and the fourth value, and the last value is going to be null or undefined because there is no fifth value available in an array. So I'm actually going to remove one comma here, and now I'm going to go and say we can console the log first and then the last. Now before, when we console log last, it had Java because it was directly defined after the first variable. So I'm going to save the file. Let's just refresh the browser, and there you go. So we get JavaScript, and then we get last as a Ruby. So what's happening here? So for example, we have 0, 1, 2, 3. So 0, 1, 2, 3. That's actually right. We need to add another comma to get the last value. Save the file, and let's just refresh it. Now we get Python. Now if you want to skip the JavaScript, what we can do here, I'm going to add a comma here, and now if I just save the file and refresh the browser, and this time I get Java, and because we have another value here, and the last value is on index 4, so the last will become here 5, I guess, which is undefined, which is not available here. So here, if I remove one comma here, oops, I want to remove a comma here. I'm going to save the file and refresh the browser and get me back to the last value of Python. So this is how you destructure an array, and that can be applied to objects as well. So this is a cool thing about it. This is really cool. We're gonna make use of it in our main proper project, right? So I'll see you guys in the next video. Welcome back, everybody. In this video, we are going to take a look at a generator function. So generators are a new type of function that allow us to pause function in the middle of execution and to be resumed later. So you are looking at a generator when you see an asterisk immediately after following the function keyword. Or sometimes you will see people use the asterisk right before the function name. So we hit the pause within our function by using the new yield keyword. So wherever you see yield keyword, that means we pause the function right there. And this can be used multiple times within the same function. Let's take a look at the syntax to define a function. So we just say function, and then we use asterisk and then the name of the function. I'll just call it my function, and we're going to pass in a parameter here, I, and here I will just say yield I, right? And then we have yield I plus 5. I'm going to save the file, and now we are going to call this function. But before, let's take a look at what it's going to do. So calling a generator function does not execute its body immediately. So an iterator object for a function is returned instead. When the iterator next method is called, the generator function's body is executed until the first yield expression, which specify the value to be returned from the iterator or with the yield. So let's take a look at that. Now, one more thing, calling the next method with an argument will resume the generator function execution and replacing the yield expression where execution was paused with the argument from the next. So a return statement in a generator, when executed, will make the generator done. And if the value is returned, it will be paused back to the value. And a generator has a returned will not yield any more values. So you got an idea what I just spoke here. Now, if you want to have a look at the reference and learn about more in details about generators, then I would highly recommend go to the Mozilla Developer Network and take a look at generators. But now let's take a look at a generator at the beginner level. So here I have the function. I'm just going to create a variable. I'm going to call it gen is equal to my function. And then I'm going to pass in, let's just say 10 as a parameter, right? So what's happening here? Now I am going to console.log gen. So let's just say console.log, and here we just pass in gen. And now I am going to just console.log this and see what happens. We save the file and refresh the browser, and it returns the function. It says suspended, and the prototype is a generator. So here we have a generator status, we have a generator function there. And now, how do we get inside to the yield, right? So we get the value from that. Here we have just talked about, we need to call a next method on it. I'm going to call the next method, and let's refresh the browser, and now it creates a generator object and returns. So it says done is equal to false, which means that the function hasn't been executed completely because there is another yield available there. So what if I just say, okay, console.log I, and I will just concatenate something like string here, which saying just logged this. I'm going to save the file and just refresh the browser, and now we can see the value there, right? Because we're calling this gen.next. Now I'm going to basically copy and paste this, right? I'm going to save the file and refresh the browser. And now, as you can see that when our function, so if our compiler goes here, it sees the yield and say, oh, I'm going to pause the function. I'm not going to execute the rest of the code, right? So now when it goes down, it says, okay, we call gen.next once. That means I'm going to execute till the first yield. And then it goes and sees, okay, gen.next is there again. So that means it's going to call the next yield. It's going to call all the code until the next yield is there. So this is how you can pause the function. We will use generator function in our final project. So yeah, that's about the generator function, guys.
Alright guys, welcome back. Now in this video we are going to start looking into classes, which are a pretty exciting topic, which were introduced in 2015 in ES6. So what are classes? Now primarily classes are syntactical sugar over JavaScript existing prototype based inheritance. So the class syntax does not introduce a new object oriented inheritance in inheritance model to JavaScript. So classes are in fact special functions. So just like you can define function expressions and function declarations, the class syntax has two components, a class expression and a class declaration. So the class declaration, one way to define a class is using a class declaration. So you declare a class with class keyword, with the name of the class, and now class expression. So class expression is another way to define a class. So class expression can be named or unnamed. Well, the named given to a named class expression is a local to a class body, and it can be retrieved through the class. So let's go and take a look at how we can define a class. So we're gonna go back to PHP Storm and let's have a look at the class keyword. So now let's say, first of all, let's go back and see how we create objects and we create a constructor functions, right? So we go as like your constructor function, we just say rectangle, and I say, well, width and height, right? So here I'll just say this dot width is equal to width, and then this dot height is equal to height, right? And then I can just say, okay, let rect is equal to new rectangle, right? And I'm gonna give like 20 by 20, and then that makes a rectangle. So let's go refresh the page, and here I've done the wrong spelling, rectangle. Okay, we've done the wrong spelling here, so we just gotta go fix it. Right, so here if I just say, okay, console.log, and I'll say rect, and then I'll just go and refresh the page, and here we can see we have a syntax error. Alright, so we're supposed to have this semicolon, not a colon. Let's refresh, and here we have a rectangle object, right? Now this is a constructor function to create an object, but now we have a keyword called class, which help us to create classes, which are basically an object at the back. But let's take a look how we can create that. I'm going to remove this code, and I'm going to define a keyword class. So let's simply type a class, and after that you need to type the name of the class. So we'll just say a person, right? And I'm going to have code block. So let's go inside the class. So we don't add parentheses here, we add a curly braces, so that's called code block as well. So now here we need to have a special function to create or to retrieve the parameters of the class. So here what I'm going to do, type constructor. So what is a constructor? Now the constructor method or function is a special method for creating and initializing object created with a class. There can be only one special method with the name constructor in a class. If you have a multiple constructor in a class, you will have a syntax error thrown. For example, let's take a look at the demo. So here I have a constructor. I'll just say, alright, I'm gonna take a name of the person, and age and profession, right? And then I'm gonna just go down, and I will just say this dot name is equal to name, this dot age is equal to age, and this dot profession is equal to profession, right? Now here if I define a constructor again, and I'll just say hey, and I'll come this dot hey is equal to hey. I'm gonna save the file, and let's just go and refresh the browser, and here we have a class may only have one constructor function, right?
So my statement is right. So I just gotta remove this constructor. So you can only have one constructor in the class. Now we have this class. It's time for us to create an object from this class. So I'll just say let John, right, is equal to new a person. And I'm going to just say, okay, name is John, age is, let's just say 30, and profession is, well, we can say programmer, right? Let's save it, and I'm going to console log John, save the file again. Let's refresh the browser. I'm just going to make the browser a bit bigger. Let's just go make it a bit bigger here. It's gonna make all right. Now here we can see we have a person object with the age, name, and a profession. Well, we have successfully created a class, and we also know how we can create a class. What is a constructor function? What class do for you? So yeah, the next topic we're gonna talk about is class inheritance, right? So here I will create another class. So let's just remove John for a second, right? Now here the person class tells us the name, age, and profession, right? Here I'm going to do a bit of modification. I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to remove this profession here as well. So just want to have a name, right? And here, the next line, we are going to define another class. All right, I'm going to create another class of student. Right now, let's take a look at what I'm explaining here. Like, let's take an example. Now, let's say we have a class of person, and we create a class of student. Now, student is a person as well, isn't it? So, student is a person, right? So the properties of the person should go inside a student as well, but student has more properties than just a person. For example, student must have a name, student must have an age, and just for the student, it should have a class or a grade or roll number in the class, or some kind of a special subject he's studying in this school. So this person might not have those properties, but student will. So what we can do is we basically can inherit from a parent class, and we make the parent class as a person class. Now we are going to use a keyword called extend to actually inherit or make a parent class of a student class. So we'll type extends, and I'm going to type the name of the class which it inherits from, which is a person in this case. So here I'll just say, okay, I am going to create a student class, and it's going to extend to a person. So now the next thing we do is we create a constructor for this class, and then inside we pass in parameters, or we can just get inside the constructor, and then we are going to use a keyword called super. So type super here, and then we are going to type name and age. Now the keyword super is referring to the parent class constructor. So the parent class constructor requires name and age. So in the super, we need to define that what we are going to give a values for name and age, because we're inheriting from a person, which is a parent class. Make sense? Right, so here I'll say, okay, I'm going to create a string, John, and age 30. Let's go down, and then after that I'm going to add some properties for the student, just for the student as well. Alright, so just say school. What school does the student go? Right, what grade the student study? So here we just come down, I would just say this dot school is equal to school, this dot, and we can say this dot grade is equal to grade. Right, now we are going to get outside of the class, and let's try using it. I'm going to create a new instance of a student. So we just say new, and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to let I put my name always, and I'll just say, okay, I'm going to say new student, right? And here I want to type school and grade value. So here I'll just say, okay, I go to IT school and the grade I study is in 12. Well, I don't, but I just say, I'm going to save the file and just let console.log, and I'll just say it. Just log the aways. I'll save the file. Let's refresh the browser. And here I have a student class. So the student class has a name John, has a grade 12 and a 30, and IT as well. Now here I am using these values, but I can simply say here, alright, I'm going to say in a constructor, I'll just say name, and I'll just say age, right? And then here I will just say it's a name and age. Okay, now basically we are passing the name and age value in the student constructor, and you might be thinking, why would you do that? Because when your applications grow bigger and bigger, then you need to manage your code. You need to understand where this thing's coming from, what are the object, what is the parent object. So this basically help us to manage the project. So right now, if someone sees the student, it's going to see that, okay, super, and this is going to be this class. But person can extend anywhere else in the project. It could be a student and a teacher and a principal or a headmaster or some kind of PT teacher. So the person goes with everywhere, but we still have a person. So now if I go save the file, I'm going to get a student, which is undefined grade and undefined student, because the first two values are going to be for the constructor in a superclass. So here we have defined IT as a name, and we have defined age 12 as a string. So here, if I just remove remove it, and here I'll just say let, and I'll just say, okay, I'm going to create John now. It's equal to new student, and I'll first of all, what I need to type here. So here the PHP or WebStorm giving me suggestions here. If you take a look at it closely, I'm just gonna zoom into this. So it says name, age, school, grade. So the first parameter is going to be name and age, and then school and grade. So here I can say, okay, well, we can say here, I'll say John is the name, age is 30, and then school, I can say IT. And then we can say grade, we can say JavaScript here. So let's say JavaScript, right? And then after that, let's take a look at what do we have in John. So it's the console.log, we say John, and let's refresh the page, but must remove this colon to semicolon. Let's refresh the page, and now we can see we have age, we have a grade, we have a name, we have a school, right? The next topic we're going to talk about is setters and getters. Well, getters or setters or setters or getters are pretty much the same thing. Okay, so getters and setters are available in other programming languages as well, like in Java, C++, or Python. So in JavaScript, we do have a getters and setter, but it's a little bit different, right? So here I'm gonna go on the person, or maybe we can do that on the student class. So here outside the constructor, I'll just create a function. I'll just say get name, add a function, and here we can just say return me this dot name, right? Also, I want to set the name. I want to go and change the name of this student later on. So I can just say set name, and I can give a parameter of name, and I can just say, all right, this dot name is equal to name. All right, and then on the next line we can say, okay, get age, and I can say, all right, return this dot age. And also we're gonna have set age, and then we can just say this dot age is equal to age, which I haven't passed in yet, but there you go. So we pass in a parameter of age. Right, so now the next property we have school. So say get school, add a function there. I would just say return this dot school, and also we are going to add set school. We can say as school, and I'm gonna say return, not return actually. I say this dot school is equal to school, right? So basically what we're doing here, we're just creating getters and setters for that. So we have one function to get the school name, we have one function to set the school name. Alright, the last thing we have a grade. Let's do that as well. So here I'd say get grade, grade, no grade. Okay, so grade, that's the right spelling. Right, so after that we just say, okay, I'm gonna go to the next line. I'm just gonna write it here, it's easier. So set this dot grade. Alright, that's done. So say set grade, so parameter grade, and I'll just say return. Is a return? No, it's not. So we just say this dot grade is equal to grade. Alright, so finally we have created our setters and getters for all four properties. I'm going to refresh the page. Right now I'm going to say, okay, give me a John. What's the John in there? Enter. Now John has this object. It has an age and a grade, JavaScript name, and John, right? Now what if I call this function John dot get name? Well, it gives me back the John. Okay, John is the name. Well, we're gonna set the different name for a John. So here I can say, okay, John dot set name, and I'm going to say aways. Press enter. It gives me undefined. Well, don't worry. Now let's go and have a look at John dot get name and enter, and this is what we get. We get aways. Now there's no John anymore. Let's take a look at the John object completely. So I'm going to press enter, and here we have a John. I think it's hidden behind me right now, so I'm just going to clear the thing out and we just say John. There you go. So John property aways is there. No more John is there anymore because we've changed it. So same as with the changing a name, we can use the setter for a grade as well. So we'll just say, okay, John set grade, and we can just say, okay, he wants to learn Python, not JavaScript. So let's press enter, and I'll just say, now I'm going to clear the console and just say John, and here just press enter, and now let's take a look at what is the grade for a John. Alright, cool. So we have successfully changed the value of the grade for a John object. So this is how we can define setters and getters. So later in the replication, whenever we need to change the value or grab the value or do some functionality, for example, if you want to get the grade of the student, so there must be a function here. Let's just say we can create, so get calculate grade, and then return the result. All right, return result. Now here we don't have a result at the moment, but you're gonna have to create that functionality and the result from this function. So that means once we have the grade, oops, I'm going to fix this up. Right, so now I think I'll press the Control L to identify, so ident the code. Let's make it smaller. All right. Now this function will have all the things. For example, total. So let total marks is equal to 100, and then say, well, student marks is, we can say, okay, this dot, and we can say John, or we can say get grade, right? And that's what we want to have. Something like, let's just say, we can store a variable here. Oops, I'm going all the way up there. So it's a let student marks is equal to this dot get grade. This is going to grab us a grade. Now we have the total marks and the marks the student got, and then after that we do some functionality. We just say, okay, we can have let result there as well. So here we just say, okay, well, I'm going to say result is equal to total marks minus student marks. All right, now the student marks will have something like, I don't know, 30. So here we have result, yeah, that's fine. Let's save it, and then I'm gonna refresh the page, and here we just see John, enter. Now student marks are 30, our grade is 30, right? So we need to have age actually here, so I'm just say age. I'll save it. Let's refresh the page. Oops, we need to have a get age. Save it. Let's, because the age has the numeric value 30 here, so we have some problem with the naming, but let's do it. So we have a John object, age 30. So here I'm going to say John dot, and what is the function name we defined? Get calc. So get calc grade. Oops, and enter, and it's say, okay, result is not defined. well, that's right, because already result is not defined. Now it should be fine. See the mistakes I make on purpose, because later on I can tell you this is going to happen in the programming career. You always make mistakes, but the best part about it, if you know how to fix them, that is the good thing about it. Let's go refresh the browser, and I'm just gonna quickly say john.getCalc, enter, and there you go, we get 70. We did some kind of functionality, right? So we know that we have a function which will basically give a minus value from 100, whatever the grade is, so that's 70, right? It's a weird function, but it does work. So what if I go and say john.set age to, we can say 50, right? And then I'm going to say, okay, john.get calc grade, I'm going to get 50 because 50 was there for the John, not 30 anymore. So here you can see we create one object. Now we have some functions in that which will manipulate the data and give us the result according to the stuff we have. So you can use these kind of techniques in the front end as well. So you have one form which fill up the values and change the values, and you say, okay, give me the result, and that function will come here, grab the value, and then show you the result. So this is very handy. You need to practice a lot with classes. We've seen inheritance, we've seen getters and setters. So yeah, this is about the classes, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next section of the course with a lot more ES6 related to promises and callback functions and all that stuff. So you know, our content is never gonna stop. So yeah, just make sure to stick around, and I'll see you guys in the next section.
Welcome back, everybody. In this video, we are going to understand the concept in JavaScript called promises. Now, promises are a little bit confusing for developers who are in a learning curve, not very expert in JavaScript, or they are trying to switch from ES5 version to ES6 because promises were introduced in ES6. Now, what is a promise? Let me give you a real world example. For example, you have a younger brother and he needs to finish his homework. So what do? You go to him and you tell him that, okay, you have to finish your work, then I'll give you an ice cream. So what are you making here? You are making a promise in the real world, right? So you're telling your brother, look, you have to finish your work, then you will get an ice cream. So unless he finishes his work, he is not going to get ice cream. Similar in JavaScript promises, we have to tell a function, you have to finish this work, then go and perform that function. So that function will not go and perform the second function first unless that finishes the first function. So let's go and take a look at example in coding, and I can assure you will be able to explain promises to anybody Alright, so let's go to WebStorm now, and I'm gonna start typing some code. So we're gonna start by typing let, I'm gonna say promise is equal to, first I'm gonna use a promise object. I'm gonna press dot here. So once I press dot, I get some suggestions from WebStorm saying these are all the methods available on the promise object. So resolve, all, prototype, raise, and reject. So the most important one here are resolve and reject. Now I've given you an example of your brother, and if he finishes his homework, that means he resolved his promise, then he's gonna get an ice cream. But what if he does not finish his homework, then he rejected that promise? So we need to say, okay, it was rejected, it was not resolved, so it was not fulfilled. So that means we have a reject function on that. So here if I say resolve, and I will just say, okay, hello, or maybe we can say brother cleaned or finished work. Well, it's a typo, but it's alright. And then after that, how do we use this promise now? So this is a promise object. I'm going to use that variable saying promise dot, and now once I press dot on a promise object, I have like four main functions. So then, right, catch, finally, symbol dot, toString tag. Now what is a then? Now let's just say I rephrase my statement. So I'll go and tell my brother, okay, you will finish your homework, then I will give you an ice cream. So what it's then here, it's a condition. Okay, so similarly in JavaScript, then keyword is a condition. So if it's fulfilled, then do this. If it's rejected, then do this. All right, so we use the then keyword here. So I'm just gonna then, and it takes a callback function. So I'll just say, okay, I'm gonna use the ES6 arrow function syntax, and then I'm going to log to the console saying console.log and say promise fulfilled. Alright, I'm gonna save the file and refresh the browser, and here we can see it's logging promise fulfilled. Alright, so now let's take a look at another example, but this time we are going to build a promise. Let's start by defining our promise. So we're going to type a keyword let, and then I'll name our variable promise is equal to new promise. So we'll create a new instance from promise object, and this promise object is going to take two functions, resolve and reject. I'll use the WebStorm suggestion snippet, then I'll press enter and it automatically type that for me. Now inside the code block, I'm going to type a boolean variable. So let, and I'm going to say finished work is equal to true. So now why am I writing this boolean variable here? Because I'm going to ask my brother whether he has done his homework or not. So we need to check whether if it's true or false. So we have finished work. If he has finished the work, then that means it's true. So here, after defining that boolean variable, I'm going to say if finished work is true. You can do that by typing is equal to sign. This is the equality, and then you can say true. But in JavaScript, that if you are defining a boolean variable in an if condition, then it will automatically understand, okay, this is a boolean, so yeah, we're trying to check whether it's true or false. So here we're checking if it's true, then get inside this and resolve the promise. So we just say resolve the promise. And if he hasn't finished his work, so we type the else block here and we say reject the promise. Right, now I'm gonna go down, and then we're gonna use this promise. So we say my promise dot then, which I've already explained, then is a condition. Say, okay, if the promise is resolved, then do this, otherwise do this. Okay, then, and this is going to take a callback. So we just say, and inside the code block, I will type console.log, and we can say, okay, homework finished. Yay! All right, let's just run this and let's see what we get. Let's refresh, and here we can see homework finished. Yay! All right, he's gonna get an ice cream. Okay, so if I make this false here and refresh the browser, and there we go, it says uncaught promise. So it's rejected, promise rejected. So we can cache that as well by typing .catch, and it's going to take a callback, and we can say console.log, and we can say he did not finish his homework. All right, I'm going to save the file. Let's refresh the browser, and here it says he did not finish with work. So if I make it true, save it, and there you go, his work is finished. Yay! All right, so this is just the overview of how promises are built, but the main reason why we have promises is by retrieving the data from the servers. That's the thing, that's what we need to do. All right, so to demonstrate that, I'm actually going to remove the code, and here we want to define a function. So first of all, I'm going to start by defining a function which will return a new promise. So we type here a function get data, and I'm going to return a new promise from this. All right, and first thing what we need to do here, we need to pass in some parameters in the function as well. So we have a method for getting the data, and then we have a URL, where to get the data from. I know we haven't talked about Ajax yet, and this is just a little bit introduction to Ajax. We have a separate section for Ajax, and Ajax basically asynchronous JavaScript and XML, which basically a way to grab the data from the server without reloading the page. Okay, we'll talk about that, but just take a look at the promise here now. So here we will say resolve and reject, and resolve and reject. All right, so it's gonna take a callback, and in the code block we make a bit of space here. I'm gonna save the file. All right, so here we are going to create an XML HTTP request object, which will help us to retrieve the data. Now, from where we are going to retrieve data, you probably noticed that I have this another tab open. I'm gonna go back to the website. I'm just gonna make it bigger for a second, and this website named jsonplaceholder.typecode.com. So it's the first online REST API for testing and prototyping. So basically it's an API which we can grab the data from, and this is the link for that. And here we have some examples. They say, okay, this is used jQuery here. So we haven't talked about jQuery. We don't want to touch about jQuery because jQuery is built on the top of a JavaScript, which is a library. It's pretty great. We will look at that maybe in the course. Well, we'll find out once this course is finished recording. I'll finish recording this course. All right, let's go to resources. Resources, we have some users and to-dos. Let's take a look at users. So users these are some users at JSON data, which I can grab from this URL. All right, so this is a URL I can use to grab this data, right? So I'm gonna just make my WebStorm bigger again. And here, first of all, let's go and create XML HTTP request object. So we just say, okay, let XHR, I'm gonna name it, is equal to XML HTTP request object. Now, in this object, we are going to use a couple of methods, first of all. So I say xhr.open the request, and here we want to tell it what method we want to use. So here we'll say method. So this method is coming from what we will pass into get data method. All right, this is the method, and then it's going to ask for what is the URL. So let's say URL is the URL. All right, then I'll say xhr.onload, right, is equal to, we set it to function, and then inside that we need to check few things. We say if this dot status, and we can say greater than equal to 200. I know it might be confusing for you guys, but be patient. I will talk about Ajax later in the course. So here we say if status is greater than is equal to 200 and this dot status less than 300. All right, then we're gonna get inside and we want to say, okay, then resolve, and resolve will take xhr dot response. All right, so what are the response we get from this xhr http request? Then we want to resolve that. This is what it's gonna get resolved. And if that's not resolved, then we just say reject, and then reject is going to have an object. So we can say, all right, so we say status, and I'm gonna say this dot status. Give me the status for that rejection. What was the status? Why? Okay, it's a misspell here. Okay, then we have a status text. This dot status text. All right, and after that we're gonna get out from here and out from here as well. Now we have this onload method on xrh, which is a XML HTTP request. Now we want to grab the error as well. So for example, we have xhr.on error. So if there is an error, then we have another function, and that's going to basically reject the promise as well. All right, I'm gonna copy and paste this here. So it's pretty much a similar thing. I'm gonna just paste that here. So if there is an error on that, then it's gonna return reject promise. Okay, it's gonna reject that. Then after that, we are going to get out from here as well, and then we call this xhr.send. So we'll send it, right? Save it and add a semicolon here as well. Oops, I typed L, semicolon here as well. Now let's go and use this function we just created. I'm just gonna make it smaller so we could look at it properly. That's too small, and we make a bit of space here, guys. Right, so we call get data, and the first thing we want to pass in a method. The method is get in uppercase. All the letters are uppercase. Get method, and what is the URL for that? Now the URL is going to be this URL. I'm gonna copy that, and I'm going to paste that in a string. I'm going to save the file, and then what is going to happen? So let's say if I go back and refresh the page, and I'll see nothing here. But if I will go and expand this and we look at the network tab, not a console, I can see there is a request went to JSON placeholder.typecode/user. I'm going to click on that, and here I get some data in the response. So there you go. So the response object is pretty much giving us some data from here. All right. Now we want to check this. Okay. So I'm going to go make my browser smaller again. We're going to use then keyword. So here I'm going to go next line and we'll type .then. Right. Once this is resolved, then go and run this function, whatever goes inside then, which is a callback function. So here we'll just say another function and use the ES6 syntax, and I'm going to say console.log and say promise resolved. Let's refresh the browser and we should see promise resolved, right? Now, how do we get the data from it? Now we get the data by passing a parameter in our callback function. So whatever is returned from a get data function, which is a promise, we can get that by typing a parameter inside of a then function, and then that will be passed into a callback function, which is a parameter name is data. So here I'm going to say, okay, well, let's just print out data from here. Let's just refresh the browser, and here we have successfully retrieved the data from this URL. How cool is that? Now, there's few things we need to understand here. For example, if I want to make my code a bit modular, then I can do this way. So I'm just going to remove this code and I'm going to say a function print data, and that's it. And we need to create that function, right? So I'm going to say a function print data, and here we can give it data parameters. So basically what's happening, it's just going to call this function. So the function is here and we have the parameter data. So whatever is response returned from get data, it's going to push that into a callback function, which is a print data. And here we can say, okay, console.log and log the data. I'm going to save the file and refresh the browser. And here we can see we're getting the data back. The response data is in JSON format. I know we haven't talked about JSON yet. Basically, it stands for JavaScript Object Notation, and this format is used to fetch the data from the servers. Now we can use the method JSON parse on this data to convert that into a JavaScript object, so we could use it in our HTML or do something with it. We have a separate video for JSON, which will teach you everything about JSON. So here we're just going to show you a quick method. So we say JSON.parse, and we're going to parse the data, and then console.log it. Refresh the browser, and here I've got a breakpoint here. I'm just going to go run with it. I'm going to go to console here. And now here we can see that we have an array of objects, and which is now usable in our HTML. The next thing we're going to look at is loading data with fetch. Welcome back everybody. In this video we are going to take a look at a new feature available in ES6 called fetch. And fetch is used to grab the data, and yeah, it's pretty cool. In the last video we used this get data function in which we return a promise which create an XML object, and we handle a lot of errors here, and there was a lot of code. Now we are going to use fetch to retrieve the same kind of data using this URL. So let's go, and I'm going to comment this block of code. So that's been commented, and now we are just going to use fetch. So I'm just going to make a space here, and so we could look at it. All right, so now here we just simply type fetch, and we are going to type the URL from where we want to fetch the data. So here I'm going to fetch the same URL which we used for the last video. So here we have a JSON placeholder.typecode.com/users, right? So this returns this data. Now here this fetch takes a then, so I'll just say then console.log. I'm going to save the file and go back and refresh the browser, and here we can see we got some sort of response back. Now we have a response back from this URL. It's going to do something in the body, and we have headers here. Okay, redirected status 200. Now we can add our logic here saying that if status is 200 or status text is blah blah blah, if the type is course. So, but we're not going to go into that because we have already seen how to add basically how to validate our response, so make sure we catch our errors and stuff like that. So now in this video we're just simply going to grab this response and convert that into JSON, whatever is returned from this request. So here I'm going to simply say get me response, and then we're gonna go and add error function syntax. Now I don't have to have a parenthesis because it's one parameter, and I don't have to have a code block because it's gonna be one line of code. So here I will say res.json, right? That's the function we're gonna call. Now this is going to get chained again, and simply we're going to say console.log. Let's save it and let's see if we get the same sort of data which we got from this request. So here we can see we got the data back from this URL which has ID, name, and it's basically a JSON object because we use this res.json method on it, and it converted that data to a JSON. So here even if I say, let's say, okay, I'm just gonna not call it, I'm gonna refresh the browser and let's see what we get. Well, we didn't get anything because we didn't actually convert that response into JSON. So JSON method is pretty great. It just converts your response into a JSON. So if you got to make sure that the response endpoint is a JSON data. Right, so that's about it. It's a pretty cool. You can use it to fetch the data, less code. So I see you guys in the next video.